Today I'm going to take you behind the scenes on a photo shoot with a professional baseball team. I recently got back from my trip to Mexico where I shot El Aguila, a professional baseball team in Veracruz, and it was really, honestly, like no other photo shoot I've ever had. I didn't know what to expect, and it was better than I expected, but it was also a little bit different. I wasn't sure what I was going to get as far as like location, what the stadium was going to look like. I actually, the owner found me on social media, funny enough, and as much as I hate social media, that proves how valuable it is, because if I wasn't posting, he would have never seen my work to begin with. So that was pretty cool. I was a little skeptical, honestly, at first. I think that's probably human nature whenever you get a message like that. And especially if it's a team that's not like a major league team or something like that, which professional baseball in the Mexican League is very high level. It's actually probably even above, a lot of people would say, above the minor leagues in the United States. Not quite to the major league level, but a lot of the guys that are in that league and on the team that I shot, they actually played Major League Baseball. So the talent level was extremely high, and that was one of the coolest things about it. Was I actually got to stay and watch an inter-squad game. The season hadn't started yet, but I got to see them play each other, and it was pretty high level. It was very impressive. A lot of those guys are still close to their prime, so it was pretty cool. But they hired me to come down there to give them images for the season for their graphics. So I wanted to do something that would be unique, and I wanted to impress them. Obviously, you always do, but I thought the shutter drag would be the perfect technique for this, because it allows your client to see. It looks like you're creating magic in the camera, because they can see it if you're tethering, like I always try to do. I do that on most of my shoots anyway, but especially with that type of shoot, they're going to be very impressed because it looks like Photoshop, honestly. So, and for baseball, with pitchers and hitters, the movement that you have, the type of athletes, it's perfect for it. So, I could only fly with, I wouldn't say a minimal amount of gear, but I didn't have a ton. I definitely couldn't bring everything I wanted. Usually whenever I do this technique, I use 9x20 backgrounds, and I put two of them beside each other, and we have another video on that too, so we'll link that if you want to check out how to make one of those big black backgrounds, because you want as little ambient light as possible, and you want a dark background so you can see contrast, because basically you're going to use LEDs for edge lights. You're going to have a long shutter speed, which is going to pick up movement, and that's going to make the LEDs, wherever they're hitting, that's going to create a light trail, and then a strobe is going to pop and freeze the action either at the beginning or at the end of the shutter opening and closing, and that's going to create a frozen piece of action along with light trails. So it's really a great way to capture movement for athletes, and we have a couple more videos on that too that you can check out also. We'll link all of that down below. So I couldn't bring my 9x20s because I already had too much luggage as it was. I had a suitcase with my clothes, I had two backpacks with my cameras and a couple extra lights, and then I had a golf bag that my buddy Jake let me borrow. It's a travel golf bag. It's a hard case. We put a few light stands in there, and thank goodness I did, because I couldn't get any once I got down there. And that's the thing, I wasn't sure what I could get once I got to Mexico. And it's a good thing I brought the light stands, because originally I thought I was going to be able to rent them, and then I wasn't able to, so I wouldn't have had any. I don't know what I would have done then. But we had 4 light stands. I had several strobes, which was a little bit overkill. I only needed one, and then now, before I forget, I did use the new Westcott Pro Max battery it's made for the FJ 402 and the FJ 800. I didn't have to charge it the whole time I was there. I was actually gone for 2 weeks. I went to Las Vegas to teach another workshop, and I didn't charge it the entire time I was gone. So it actually had 3/4 power left on it, which is pretty incredible. Now, granted, I was shooting at a low power, but that battery is amazing. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. So great job, Westcott, for that. So I was able to bring those strobes, the batteries, and like 4, I think, strobes, batteries, and I had 2 LED lights. I had a couple strip boxes, and I had 2 extra pro backgrounds, black. Those aren't as big as the 9x20s. Those are 8x10, and so they will work for something like this, but they're not quite as tall, because you don't want them right behind the subject. You're going to have to leave a little bit of room, and if you shoot wide angle, which I like to do with sports sometimes, then I'm going to put this bat down. I'm getting tired of holding this. So the smaller backgrounds, I had to bring those, and pretty much that right there was 1 suitcase, 2 backpacks, and a Pelican case. So that was already bordering too much luggage, and it was expensive to check. I'm not going to lie. No, thankfully they were paying for it, obviously, because they hired me. So, but it was close to, I think, $1,000. But by the time I got home to check all that, so it definitely was not cheap. I couldn't really have brought any more, and I wasn't sure what I was going to get there. So I was just praying that I had what I needed. And I had 2 extra up stands, also extra up pro stands. So we got there. They took me to the stadium. The stadium was awesome, and the area that I shot in was great. It was pretty much like an office that was underneath the stadium, and there was a tunnel that walks out into the main bleachers where the fans sit. And it was great, but there were big windows everywhere, which is obviously a huge problem for the shutter drag because you want minimal ambient light. So that's really what I want to highlight here, is that you need to understand. It's a very good lesson because you need to understand 100% how light behaves. So in that situation, I've seen other people try to do the same technique and look in the area that they're in and think that they had low enough ambient light, and then in front of, this was at a workshop, in front of people, students, it didn't work because there was too much ambient light, and the shutter drag technique has to have low ambient light for it to be effective. Otherwise the picture's gonna look really muddy. So once we had everything set up and we blocked a couple windows off, we actually had to bring in part of the outfield wall, the part of the padding, to block the windows in the back, and then we put the backgrounds up against the windows in the front. And also another hurdle I had to jump was that there was the video guy was next to me, and he had not ambient, but he had constant LED light going, which was bleeding over into my set. So we ended up having to take signs, backgrounds with logos on them that weren't black. I think one of them is in white. We had stuff stacked and enclosing me every which way you could think. And it was a bunch of random stuff that you wouldn't think that you would need. But I knew how much ambient light was too much and what would be acceptable. Had I not known that, this could have been a huge disaster. Because all the players, they were doing a uniform reveal. And so the team photographer was doing shots of them on a green screen, and they were coming over to me for the more creative stuff and then going over to video. So it was one big, basically, media day. And if all those players had come over, I think there was at least 20, and it may have been closer to 30 actually, players that I actually ended up shooting. It probably was closer to 30. If they had shown up, and I did this across 3 or 4 days, so it wasn't all in one day, but had they all shown up, it was basically like 8 to 10 a day, and it wasn't working, it would have been a disaster. And I wasn't in a situation where I could go rent anything or borrow anything from anybody, so I had to make sure it was right. And somebody that doesn't understand, that might know how to do the shutter drag technique, but doesn't really understand how light behaves. So in situations like that, they can pivot and fix problems, because I always say photography is problem solving, right? So I had to make sure that everything was, the way we needed it. And it was still borderline. It was still pretty bright, especially the second day, because the sun set behind the stadium and it was coming in more than the first day. And the first day I did in the morning, we shot in the morning. It's a lot easier because the sun was either in the back or overhead, and so it wasn't shut. And it was also overcast too, so it wasn't as bad. But the second day there was no clouds, and the sun when it got low, it was a little bit brighter. So that posed a huge problem. We had to put extra stuff in the second day to block everything. All right, so now we're going to take you to the behind the scenes video where I explain the setup and I explain and show you some of the things that we had to use that we had to find in their office to block little pockets of light and enclose that space a little bit more so that it was acceptable to shoot in. So you want no ambient. You can see there's windows all over back here that we had to cover up. We had to get really creative with sheets. We had to put, there's blue sheet over here. There's backgrounds that have stuff on them that doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing. You really want black all the way around. We have more sheets over here. We have signs because there was video going on next to me. So he had constant lighting on the whole time, which we have on too, but his was contaminated ours, so we had to put signs down below to block the bottom. So there was a lot going on here. So for this setup specifically, I had to bring all this stuff with me. So I couldn't bring exactly what I wanted. I had to really go with the bare minimum. So we've got 3 lights. We've got for the strobe that's gonna freeze the action, we have an FJ400 and a Manny Ortiz beauty dish with a silver interior, and we got the diffusion on it. And I brought my Hurley Pro bags to put water in for sandbags, so I don't want to fly with sand, obviously. It'd be too heavy. And then I had to bring 4 stands that were Westcott, and they're like medium-sized stands that are not very heavy duty, and you can see how much this is bending. But I couldn't bring C stands. That would have been way too expensive. It was already like $200 a bag for 2 of my bags because they were oversized. So I put these in a golf bag, but I barely had enough room as it was. I mean, barely, to fit all this stuff. Okay, so then we have some more stands back here, and then we've got 1x3 strip boxes, which I was gonna bring the 1x4s. I would rather have 1x4s, but because that gives you more light, more of a spread. But again, I had to conserve room as much as possible. So we've got 1x3s with gels taped in there. We've got red and blue, because those are our two colors. And black is also one, but we obviously, for the gels, red and blue made sense. We've got Westcott L120Bs. They're turned up at full power for the edge lights. And then we have two X-Drop Pros overlapping each other. I wasn't able to pull them all the way apart, so the end of this one is here and the other end is like right here. You can see I would rather have had them closer or pulled apart further. And again, these aren't ideal for this because I love these backgrounds, but they don't go up high enough. So when I'm shooting athletes and I want to shoot wide angle action shots, it's not really tall enough because of all this stuff going on up here. So that's in some of the pictures, but again, you have to make it work the best you can. I had the second baseman go. He was one of the last ones to go a second ago, the starting second baseman. And you can see here on the iPad, he actually did a really good job. This is one of my favorite shots from the whole trip. But he shrunk down and jumped not as high as he normally would. So he was able to make it work, and we got a really cool action shot. We weren't able to do that with everybody because we just didn't have enough room. But thankfully we did for a few. Yeah, so this is pretty much it. So this is where I've been the past 3 days. We're gonna go do some outside shots tomorrow, I think, on the field, hopefully before I leave. But that should be fun too and should give them something a lot different. But everybody here has been super nice. A little bit of a challenge because I don't speak Spanish, even though my last name's Hernandez. But everybody's been really good, and it's been a very fun experience, fun trip. So I can't wait to show you guys the images, but we just wanted to go over the setup right now just to show you what it's gonna look like, and then we'll go through the pictures later. Okay, so I hope that gives you a better, more clear picture of what I had to deal with and work around. And in that type of situation, the biggest thing is you can't panic. That's why you need to always make sure that you're early and that you can scout out locations as early as possible, because if it's a situation like that where you might have to go buy something, then if you're not in a situation where you can go do that, then that's going to be a really big deal. So just make sure that you plan ahead. And I did actually come the day, we didn't shoot the day that I got there. I was able to look at the space and set everything up, and then the next day is when we shot. So we had to add stuff that second day. So the first day I thought we had it okay. I thought we had everything blocked off okay. And the second day, I realized we needed more. And the third day we needed even more because of where the sun was. So so the earlier the better. Always make sure that you know where you're going if you can. And in this case, this was kind of an unknown because I'd never been there, and they're not going to know what I want. So I can have them send me pictures, but sometimes it's kind of hard to tell even from those. So now we're going to cut to behind the scenes of me actually taking photos of the players, utilizing that space, interacting with them, some of the poses I did, and some of my favorite images from the shoot. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. Hopefully you can take something away with it and help you in the future with preparing for shoots and also knowing how light behaves. So if you do need to pivot and make changes on the fly, that you're able to do that. Make sure you go to matthernandezcreative.com, sign up for the newsletter. That way you get notified when we post new videos, release new templates or presets, and upcoming workshops for the summer, which are getting ready to start up now. Also, if you want to see more in-depth detail on the shutter drag technique, make sure you subscribe to me on Patreon. We've got a video up already with a little bit more in-depth, but I'm gonna do another video. We're getting ready to film one on this specific shoot here, where I'm gonna show you a couple of very key tips that are extremely important to help you make sure if you do this kind of shoot, or if you do try to do the shutter drag for a client, that you deliver 100% the best you can give them, because it is a little bit tricky, and there are a couple tips, pro tips that I highly recommend that I use that will make it a lot easier on you. So we'll be filming that soon, so stay on the lookout for that also. Thanks for watching.
El mejor, las mejores fotos. He's the best. He's the best.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Mucho flow, brother. Do the chant again.
That was awesome. Most of them haven't said anything. I said most of them really haven't said anything, you know.